Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Ethan Cooper was 39 when his life fell apart on an ordinary Wednesday in September. He was a logistics manager at a distribution company and had just been promoted, which meant moving to a suburb that promised peace and growth. The house was everything he'd ever dreamed of: 3 bedrooms, a big yard, a 2-car garage, and neighbors who seemed friendly from day one. Nicole, his wife of 26, had agreed to quit her job as a graphic designer to move with him. "It's going to be an adventure," she said, with that smile that had made him fall for her 3 years earlier. 2 years of marriage had been enough for Ethan to believe he knew every detail about that woman. He was wrong. Nicole adjusted to the new neighborhood surprisingly easily. While Ethan spent long hours at the office learning the ropes of the new branch, she explored the area, met people, shopped at the local market, and hit the community gym. In less than 3 weeks, Nicole had a whole circle of friends: Linda, a 32-year-old advertiser married to a dentist, and Margaret, 28, wife of a real estate agent. The 3 of them met almost every day for morning walks or coffee at one another's houses. Ethan genuinely loved seeing her so integrated and happy. He knew leaving her job had been a sacrifice, and watching Nicole excited and full of plans made him feel like the move had been the right choice. It was on a Tuesday night during dinner that Nicole mentioned the book club, like she was just sharing some ordinary detail. "Linda invited me to join a reading group that meets every Wednesday," she said, poking at her food with her fork. "It's at a woman's house named Simone. She lives 3 streets up." "Sounds interesting. What do you think?" Ethan looked up from his plate of pasta, surprised but smiling. "A book club? You never seemed like much of a reader," he said lightly. "But if it's something you're into, go for it." Nicole smiled, visibly relieved. "I just want to do something productive, you know? I don't want to sit around watching TV all day while you work." It made sense. To Ethan, it sounded healthy. He had no reason to suspect anything. The first Wednesday came, and Nicole left the house at 2 in the afternoon, wearing a light dress and casual sandals. "I don't know what time I'll be back, but probably around 7, she said, kissing his cheek before heading out. He was in the living room reviewing work reports and just nodded absently. When Nicole got home that night, she was energetic, talking about the women she'd met and how the book discussion had been deep. Ethan asked what book they were reading, and she replied, "Oh, it's a romance about relationships, kind of complex." He didn't press. Weeks turned into months, and Wednesday nights became as predictable as Ethan's 6 a.m. alarm. For 3 months, Nicole never missed a single meeting. Over time, Ethan started noticing small things that, on their own, meant nothing, but together, they formed a nagging discomfort he couldn't ignore. Nicole always showered before leaving on Wednesdays, something she never did when she went out with friends on other days. She picked out more put-together clothes, sometimes changing 2 or 3 times before deciding. She wore the most expensive perfume, the one Ethan had given her for her birthday, the one she normally saved for special occasions. When she came back around 7, her hair was slightly messy, her cheeks flushed, and she carried a different energy, as if she'd come back from something far more intense than a simple book meeting. "It's so hot in Simone's house," she'd say, laughing, when he commented. He pretended to accept the explanation, but the little voice in his head had already taken root. What really set off the alarm in his mind was an innocent conversation at work. Ryan Mitchell, a new warehouse supervisor Ethan had met just a few weeks ago, was in the break room sipping coffee and chuckling to himself while looking at his phone. "Sorry, man," Ryan said when he noticed Ethan's curious look. "My friend Troy just texted me. This guy's crazy." Ethan, just out of politeness, asked, "What did he do now?" Ryan hesitated for a second, like he was deciding whether to tell, then sighed. "Troy's got this thing every Wednesday. He goes to this private gathering in a residential neighborhood nearby. The women tell their husbands they're going to a book club, but it's something else. Nothing to do with reading. It's a whole, let's just say, liberal, scene. He gave a half-smile, uncomfortable. He says it's just married people looking for discreet fun. Sounds insane, but he never misses a week. Ethan felt like someone had dumped ice water over his head. Wednesdays. Book club. Residential neighborhood. The words lined up in his mind like puzzle pieces he didn't want to put together. He forced a laugh, pretended the story was ridiculous, and changed the subject. But the rest of the day was a blur. He drove home on autopilot, his hands sweaty on the steering wheel. Nicole was in the kitchen making dinner, humming softly. When he walked in, she came over, gave him a quick kiss, and asked how his day was. Ethan mumbled something about being tired and went straight to the bedroom to change. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he tried to convince himself he was overreacting. Ryan hadn't mentioned any specific address. Thousands of women across the world met for book clubs on Wednesdays. It could just be a coincidence. But deep down, a quiet voice kept saying it wasn't. In the days that followed, Ethan started watching everything with near-obsessive attention. He asked Nicole about the book they were reading. It's about a woman who uncovers secrets from her past, she answered, scrolling on her phone without looking at him. What's the title? He pressed. Oh, I always forget the title, it has a blue cover. The answer felt too vague. Ethan realized Nicole never brought a book home, never mentioned authors, never talked about specific scenes. When he asked about the women in the group, she'd name them, but never give last names or concrete details. Another change started to bother him, Nicole's phone. Before, it usually sat on the coffee table or the couch. Now, it was always right next to her, in her purse, in her pocket, face down. One night, while she was in the shower, Ethan tried to unlock it, only to find she'd set a passcode. Something she'd never bothered with before. The next Tuesday, Ethan made a decision. On Wednesday morning, he called the office and said he needed to attend an urgent doctor's appointment, routine tests that couldn't be rescheduled. His supervisor trusted him and approved the absence without question. Ethan spent the morning restless, checking the clock constantly. At 2 p.m., Nicole left the house as always, dressed up, perfumed, bag over her shoulder. I'll be back around 7, she said, like she was reciting a script. She got into her silver Honda Civic and drove off down the quiet suburban street. Ethan waited 5 minutes, grabbed his keys, got in his car, and started following her at a safe distance. She seemed calm, driving through the neighborhood until she turned into a slightly more secluded area. Finally, Nicole pulled up in front of a large house with tall walls and trees blocking most of the street view. Ethan saw other women arriving around the same time, all dressed more carefully than you'd expect for a simple book meeting. An older woman with blonde hair greeted each one at the door with hugs and smiles. Nicole went inside, and the door shut behind her. Ethan parked 2 blocks down and sat there for a few minutes, trying to steady his breathing. His heart was pounding too hard for someone who was just checking a suspicion. After what felt like forever, he got out of the car and walked back, staying on the opposite side of the street. Behind the property, where the vegetation was thickest, he found a section of the fence that was lower. With effort, he climbed over and dropped down slowly, hiding behind a thick-trunked tree. From there, he had a partial view of the backyard and the area near the pool. What he saw made his stomach turn. There were several people scattered around the outdoor space, all in an atmosphere that had nothing to do with a book club. Loud music, drinks in hands, exaggerated laughter, people too close, lingering hugs, touches that went way beyond what was acceptable between strangers. This wasn't an innocent gathering. It was clearly intimate, charged with hidden intentions. Ethan recognized Nicole almost immediately. She was standing next to a dark-haired man, broad-shouldered and strong, holding her around the waist with familiarity. They were laughing, touching, exchanging glances Ethan would never mistake for friendship. At one point, the man leaned in closer, and Nicole didn't pull away. On the contrary, she looked comfortable, engaged. Nearby, Linda was at the edge of the pool with another man, laughing loudly, far too close for a married couple. Margaret was dancing in the middle of a small group, surrounded and touched casually, as if this were routine. People moved around freely, and the whole atmosphere was that of something hidden from the world. Ethan's hand started shaking when he pulled out his phone. For a few seconds, he fought with himself. Part of him wanted to leave, pretend he hadn't seen anything. Another part knew that without proof, he'd be seen as paranoid, even by himself. He pressed record and held the phone steady, capturing a few minutes of it. He didn't need details. Just enough to show what any person would understand: his wife in a place she shouldn't be, being intimate with another man. When he felt he couldn't watch any longer, he put the phone in his pocket, climbed down from the fence with difficulty, and walked back to the front of the house. His head felt heavy, his heart racing, but a strange coldness was forming inside him, like a switch had been flipped off. He rang the doorbell hard, more than once, until the blonde woman from before appeared, clearly annoyed. "Can I help you?" she asked, trying to keep her composure. Ethan didn't wait for an invitation. He shoved the door open just enough to step inside and walk down the hallway, guided by the music coming from the back of the house. When he reached the outdoor area, the music cut off the moment someone noticed him. He shouted Nicole's name. The sound echoed through the yard like thunder. Conversation stopped. Eyes turned to him. People adjusted their clothes, grabbed towels, stepped back, embarrassed. Nicole turned slowly, as if her body refused to obey. When she saw him, she went completely pale. "Ethan? What are you doing here?" Her voice came out shaky, almost a whisper. He walked toward her slowly, not raising his voice, but with a look she'd never seen before. "Get dressed. Now." She burst into tears immediately, grabbing the dress lying on a nearby chair. As she tried to put it on, her hands shook so badly she could barely button it. Some women started protesting, saying he couldn't just barge in like that it was an invasion. He didn't respond to any of them. The blonde woman, whom he assumed was Simone, tried to block his path. "You can't just." "I can," he cut in, firm. "And I'm leaving with my wife." Holding Nicole by the arm, without hurting her, but making it clear there was no negotiation, Ethan walked through the house with her crying beside him until they reached the front door. The walk to the car was silent, heavy, almost suffocating. Ethan opened the passenger door and Nicole got in, still sobbing. He shut the door harder than he meant to, walked around, got behind the wheel, and started the car. He drove back home in complete silence. The trip took less than 10 minutes, but to them it felt like an eternity. Nicole cried, trying to speak between sobs. "Ethan, please, let me explain. I didn't mean to." He didn't answer. He kept his eyes fixed on the road, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. At home, Ethan parked in the garage, got out, and walked inside without waiting for Nicole. She followed, stumbling over words and tears. In the living room, he finally turned to face her. Ethan's face was a mix of pain and something close to contempt. 3 months, Nicole, he said quietly, almost calm. 3 months where you left this house, looked me in the eyes, kissed me, and went off to do this behind my back. 3 months of lies. Nicole shook her head, desperate. "It wasn't like that, Ethan, I swear, the girls pushed me. I let myself get carried away, it was weakness, it was. I didn't think." He pulled out his phone, opened the video, and turned the screen toward her. No words were needed. The footage showed exactly what anyone would understand: closeness, intimacy, betrayal. Nicole covered her mouth with her hands, as if she could turn back time with just a gesture. "That doesn't look like someone who got carried away once," Ethan said, his voice still quiet but sharp. "It looks like someone who chose this, week after week. Nicole started sobbing louder. "Please, Ethan. I love you, it was the worst mistake of my life. I'll never." He cut her off, now firmer. "It wasn't a mistake. It was 12 Wednesdays. 12. How many times did you do this, Nicole? How many times did you think I was stupid enough to believe the book club story?" She couldn't answer. She just cried and trembled. It was in that silence that something inside Ethan closed off completely. He picked up the phone again, opened his contacts, and started scrolling. He recognized some names: Jeff, the dentist, Linda's husband. Mark, the realtor, Margaret's husband. 2 or 3 other men from the neighborhood he'd chatted with at barbecues and casual gatherings. Nicole, realizing what he was about to do, threw herself at his feet. "Ethan, please, don't do this, please, I beg you, you'll destroy families." "I didn't destroy anything," he replied, emotionless. "I'm just showing you what's already there." He attached clips of the video to a short, direct message. "Your wives aren't in any book club. I'm sorry I'm the one who has to show you this, but I thought you deserved to know." He hit send. Several names disappeared from the screen as the messages went out. Then he dropped the phone onto the coffee table. Nicole collapsed to her knees, clutching his legs. "You destroyed my life," she cried. "You destroyed everything. How could you do this to me?" Ethan looked down at her with a coldness that surprised him. "I just took off the mask you put on me first," he replied. 12 Wednesdays, Nicole. I didn't start this." The phone started vibrating almost immediately. Messages poured in one after another. Some husbands thanked him, shocked. Others asked if it was some kind of sick joke. A few reacted with rage, saying he had no right to expose anyone. One of the women, probably Linda or Margaret, sent threatening messages about suing him for invasion of privacy. Ethan ignored it all. He walked to the closet, grabbed a blanket, and returned to the living room. He lay down on the sofa, turning his back to Nicole. "Go to the bedroom," he said, not looking at her. "I don't want you near me." She climbed the stairs crying, each step echoing through the house that suddenly felt too big for the two of them. The next morning, before sunrise, Ethan was already awake. His body ached from sleeping on the sofa, but his mind was strangely clear. He made coffee, opened his laptop, and started researching divorce lawyers. By 8 a.m., he had an appointment scheduled for that afternoon. When Nicole came down the stairs around 9, her eyes swollen, he was sitting at the table, sipping coffee. "Ethan, please, can we talk? Can we try?" He raised his hand, cutting off any attempt. "I'm filing for divorce today," he said bluntly. "You should probably find a lawyer too." She started crying again. "We can try therapy. I'll change. I'll do anything you want." "There's nothing to fix," he replied firmly. "You threw away trust. Without that, there's no marriage." The meeting with the lawyer was straightforward. Gregory Townsend, an experienced attorney, watched the video in silence, then closed his laptop calmly. "This kind of evidence makes it a simple case of adultery," he commented. "It will definitely impact asset division in this state." "The house is in both your names?" Ethan explained it was, but the down payment had come from his grandfather's inheritance. "That works heavily in your favor," the lawyer said, taking notes. "Also, from what you've told me, she's not working right now. It'll be hard for her to argue for alimony, given the context." The following weeks were a mix of paperwork, cold emails exchanged between lawyers, boxes scattered around the house, belongings divided like pieces of a life that no longer existed. Ethan and Nicole hardly spoke. When they had to deal with something, it was quick, practical, with no intimacy left. The neighborhood, of course, didn't stay indifferent. Within the first 48 hours after Ethan sent his messages, 5 couples announced separations. Jeff confronted Linda that same night. She confessed everything, and within 3 months, the divorce was final. Mark found out Margaret hadn't just attended the meetings, she'd been using joint funds to pay for gifts and outings. Their case dragged on for nearly a year in court. There were 2 husbands who chose to forgive. One was a local pastor who spoke about forgiveness and rebuilding in a sermon. The other was an older man who seemed simply tired, as if he'd known deep down that something was wrong for a long time. Simone, the woman whose house had hosted it all, perhaps faced the harshest consequences. Her husband, Robert, a corporate executive who traveled often, had no idea what happened on Wednesdays in his own home. When he received the video, forwarded by an acquaintance, he came home early, confronted Simone, and heard her attempt to justify it. She claimed she was just creating a space of freedom for women trapped in unhappy marriages. Robert didn't accept it. He filed for divorce and put the house on sale the same month. Soon after, Simone saw her reputation crumble, friends drift away, and the life she knew fall apart. Nicole, for her part, fought to hold on until the very end. She sent Ethan daily messages, showed up at his office at lunchtime, left handwritten letters under the door. In one, she wrote, "I know I destroyed what we had. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I love you. If you give me a chance, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for what I did." Ethan read the letter once. Then he threw it in the trash. He blocked her number, asked the building's front desk not to let her in, and treated every attempt to reach him as something from the past. The divorce was finalized in about 6 months, a relatively short time, considering everything at stake. The judge recognized the adultery, noted that the home's down payment had come from Ethan's inheritance, and ruled that the majority of the sale proceeds would go to him. Still, staying in that neighborhood felt impossible. Every corner held a memory. Every glance carried pity, curiosity, or judgment. Exhausted, Ethan accepted a transfer to another branch of the company, nearly 1,500 miles away. Nicole tried to stay for a while, but the environment became unbearable. Some people never spoke to her again. Others kept a polite distance. The women who'd been part of the club vanished too, each dealing with their own fallout. Eventually, Nicole packed her things and moved back in with her parents, in a small town a few hours away. 9 months after the day everything came to light, Ethan was driving down the interstate, leaving behind the state where so much had happened. His belongings were ahead of him in a moving truck. He'd already visited the new apartment, a modern place in a busy neighborhood where no one knew him and no one knew his story. As he drove, he thought of Nicole for the last time. Not with anger. Not with longing. The closest feeling he could identify was indifference. It was like remembering someone from another life. He knew he'd lost 2 years of marriage, many expectations, a dream of family. But at the same time, he felt he'd gained something precious, clarity. Clarity about boundaries, about respect, about the value of his own peace. When he passed the sign marking the border between states, he glanced quickly in the rearview mirror, then adjusted it and turned his eyes back to the road. There was nothing behind worth reaching for. Nicole was the past. The future, though uncertain, was his. He didn't know if he'd ever trust someone the same way again. But right then, it didn't matter. He was alive. He was free. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something close to hope. The road stretched ahead, long and open. Ethan pressed the accelerator a little harder, leaving behind not just a place, but an entire life that no longer made sense to call home. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.